think that's is a part of my DNA, you know, part of it from difficult aspects of my childhood. You know, I grew up with violence in my home, you know, so I developed, you know, a really acute emotional sense, you know, out of defense. You know, I just needed to make sure that my father was okay. I needed to make sure things were going well. And I just became really hypersensitive to emotional movement in a room as a defense mechanism. And then as I, you know, grew and as I started to develop that, you know, that heightened sense that started out as defense, as I settled down and, you know, came into a deeper understanding of my power and my desires in the world, it was easier to connect to people in a loving way. It transferred easily from a defense mechanism to an ability to love and care for people. I think there's always an aspect of us that when we feel unloved, you know, in any capacity, in any relationship, when we feel unloved, when we feel mistreated, when we feel somehow disrespected, it's a natural reaction to want revenge. And I think that's what happens with most people, specifically in our most vulnerable stages when we're children. And we haven't done anything to deserve that kind of treatment. It's really hard for the ego to not click into revenge, you know? And, you know, once I discovered that mechanism, once I saw that most of us walk around with, that, you know, we want revenge against that mistreatment. It's a little piece of that with all of us. So the problem is that when you seek revenge, you destroy yourself. And that's the paradoxical conflict that we all live in. Someone has mistreated us. We want revenge, but if we take it, we hurt ourselves more.
It's crazy how it's
right?
designed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so that is the, as Radhanath Swami referred to, the perplexing situation that we find ourselves in. And the only answer is loving kindness. And most of us don't want to hear that. It's like, I'll take my chances with revenge. And for me, I had such a beautiful example of loving kindness in my grandmother when I was growing up. I always knew I wanted to be that. The way that she loved and cared for people. I didn't realize that her giving was connected to her peace. That was something that I got a concept of later. But I always knew that that was my example, and I think that's the critical part. We need an example. Somebody has to be an example. Human beings are creatures of example. You got to see it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's really where I am in my life right now. I want to show what it looks like to be loving and kind and giving and forgiving, and I want to model those virtues as best I can. Different people pick different things. For the type of material world climbing, you know, that I did for a big chunk of my life, it was military-minded. You know, we're gonna get that flag to the top of that hill, and you are gonna help or you're not gonna be here, right? So that's one mindset. And then after I got the flag to the hill, a couple of times and kept getting the flag to the hill and realized that you don't feel good and you've scorched earth, around you, and you're like, nobody's really happy, And then I started to have to question that mindset. I had one of the greatest runs in Hollywood history, that 8 #1 movies, all over 100 domestic, biggest global movie star, all of that, and my family was miserable, And I had equated winning with happiness. And the transition from product focus, like military-minded, get to the top of that hill, and then I shifted into a mindset. It was really my kids who brought me out of that. A shift into discovering, like, well, damn, people really care about how they feel. Right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
as crazy as that sounds,
No,
like,
it's true.
my father wasn't concerned with how I felt, He wasn't concerned with how he felt. He was military-minded. You achieved the mission. And there's 2 possibilities. When I give you a mission, there's 2 possibilities. 1, you complete the mission. 2, you're dead. Right? That's what my father was saying. I grew up with that. Oh, cool, right? And I actually had to discover feelings, right? And start, like, I used to have to really focus on, okay, how's this person feel? How's this person feel? Not what do I need them to do? And not they're wasting our time right now and we're losing time and we're gonna not finish this mission, right? But there is a balance between the mindset of achieving and loving kindness that at this point in my life, I've actually discovered the magical balance, but it's really hard to get people to let go of the attack and defend achievement mindset and trust the care and concern for your fellow humans as a way of creating higher production. It's can you become Michael Jordan without that mindset? And that is a really powerful, difficult question. It's like, most people can't sustain the mindset that, unfortunately, because it can be so destructive, but most people can't sustain that level of discipline to manifest the things that they want in their life. And there's a poisonous edge to that kind of discipline. And I've been to the edge of that kind of material world discipline in my mind. And I can tell you, you can have a whole lot of stuff and be miserable out there on that edge. And I found a much more comfortable and productive space in my life. And you still need that discipline.
Yes.
But it's like when you use that kind of power to achieve things, it's like there's a brutal reckoning. My father, my mother, and my grandmother, whenever I think about the 3 of them, I picture a triangle in my mind. And I see, like, my father was the base as discipline. And my mother didn't care about anything but education. Like, you had to learn, grow, study, travel. Like, my mother was really serious about educating the mind. And my grandmother was love and God. My grandmother was that grandmother at Resurrection Baptist Church. And she had, we were doing our Easter recitations, and we was at the nativity, So she was that grandmother at the church, and her life was deeply devoted to God and Jesus in the form of loving service, right? So the form that it took was she was working hard to love everybody. You know, I remember my grandmother bringing homeless people into our house when we were little and washing them in our bathtub. I thought that was the nastiest thing. But she would be in the bathroom with her hands washing homeless people, you know. And as a child, it was like, no! You know? But as I grew older, I just saw how dedicated and devoted she was to living her life in service.